Hello and welcome to the Motherhood Village podcast. I'm on with a very special guest. I have Miss Amber, who is an early childhood expert with almost 30 years in the field, whether it's been teaching, directing, owning, or opening new schools. Miss Amber, how are you today?
I'm fantastic. Thanks so much for having me.
So excited to speak with you. Okay, so favorite book or one that has made a great impact for you?
The favorite book that comes to mind is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. It has been really life-changing for me. I went through a really traumatic divorce, 9 years ago, and just in a dark place, and just learning to be present and in the moment with, when you have a lot of depression or anxiety, you just are always thinking forward and worrying about everything. So The Power of Now, I think I even read it 2 times, which is not normal for me, but it just was a reminder to just be in this very moment and present because truly it's all that we have, really. And if we're present with this moment, there's not a lot of worry, right? If you're just still. So that book was really powerful for me, especially as a mom of four and a business owner and always going. A lot of times my coping mechanism for almost 20 years was to be busy and you want those. I always loved, how do you manage everything? How do you do it
Yeah,
all? That always felt really good to me. Yes, yeah, I'm doing it. I'm juggling my four kids, my business, volunteering. But truly, I wasn't thinking and I was burying a lot of my just what was going around in life.
sure.
So, yeah, I love that book. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. So, with your extensive experience in earlyhood child education, can you share the key factors that parents should look for when selecting a high quality childcare center? And what are any red flags to watch out for? And how can parents ensure that the center aligns with their values?
Yeah, I like to say use your senses. Obviously, we have 5 senses, but I say 4 senses. So, of course, when you walk into a childcare center, if it's a home daycare or a preschool environment, you're gonna use your eyes. You're gonna see if it's clean, is it organized, is it cute, are the kids engaged, are they laughing, are the teachers looking at you? Like, those are all, like, really good things to watch for. The second one is smell. I think smell is huge, and all my staff, my team knows, like, when I walk into your classroom, it better smell good. And preschool, little ones have a lot of smell coming from them. We get it, but really it should smell great because there's so much that goes through our body when we smell things. So, third is touch or feeling. So, your touch is and hearing. Actually, it's hearing, sorry. Hearing is, how does the school sound? Are kids screaming? Are they like crying? There's going to be off days with people for sure. So, especially little ones, you might have a little one starting on their first day and they might be crying, but you really want to listen to see how the school sounds. Are the kids laughing? Is there music playing in the background? I'm a really big fan of music all day long for kids, not just during nap time, but during art. And then for circle time, you just really want to hear teachers laughing, teachers talking kindly is really big. And then the last one is feel. How does the school make you feel? Like, really follow your intuition. You want those warm fuzzies. You want to leave there like, I got the warm fuzzies, I got the little goosebumps, and this is definitely the place for my child. And red flags are if you go into a center and teachers don't acknowledge you, they don't look at you. I personally think if the school is dirty and really cluttery, there's just stuff everywhere. You have to imagine that they are ignoring a lot of the safety things that parents can't see in the background. Because if it's like a home, right? Or you're walking into a school that's a second version of their home. It's an extension of the preschool owner. That's how I've always viewed it with mine. And if it's just cluttery and disorganized, just imagine what's going on behind the scenes. And you really want your kids taken care of. So those are really big red flags for me.
Whoa. So the reason why I say that is because I didn't expect that answer and I like it so much because for anyone listening, you just hit on a lot. And I love how you said to break down the senses because my son is 6. So we're past that stage, but I think all of that could apply to whether it's a daycare or a regular school. And I see it in all the mom groups, like what school, what this. And a lot of times I think moms get inundated with so much biased, subjective opinions on these groups. And I did
Mhm.
a blog post about it. And I cannot wait to do something from this conversation because my blog post was based on my own experience, plus talking to a former educator. But in essence, what I said was it has to be how you feel, what is best for your child. But I love how you broke down the senses because the smell one really resonated with me because my son's preschool, amazing. I wish he could have stayed there like the rest of his childhood
Yeah.
education.
Yeah.
It's like Montessori mixed with like brain development. So they do a lot of research. Their teachers are
Yeah.
always like, what's new on brain development, all this stuff. My son was learning Picasso and different musicians, like all the things, but their center smelled always so good, so clean, and not like with potpourri to like offset, just like a
Yes.
clean, everything was white
Yes.
wood. And I
Mhm.
remember falling in and I was like, this is it. All the windows were massive and clear so the
Yeah.
teachers in the other rooms could see what's going
Mhm.
on. And I was just like, oh, this is it. I don't need to see another school.
Yeah.
And I remember going into another school that didn't smell so clean. So I love that, how you described that and what
Yeah.
that looks like because I experienced that.
Yeah. No, I think it's so true. I think smell is so much more powerful than we ever really stop and think about. So yeah.
Because it is clean. Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
why when you said it, it was like nostalgic because I was like, yeah, I didn't think about it. I didn't say, oh, this school smells good and that's the
Yeah.
decision. But I felt so good. And now in hindsight, my son barely got sick. There wasn't a lot of kids that were getting sick because they were
Mm.
constantly cleaning. Sometimes they'd even close the school, like when we would have the winter break or summer, they'd close the school to disinfect. Like they were constantly cleaning. So I love that.
You brought up a really good point because as moms, there's so much pressure to go to the school, right? I know in my area, it's okay, well, you have to go to this preschool to get to this elementary school. And people are already thinking college, right? And there's like all this pressure. And I think, yes, you want word of mouth recommendations for preschools, but I think it's really important to think about what your child needs because your child may not fit into the preschool. And so I think it's really easy to get wrapped up into the cool thing to do, even as adults. But we have to really remember, like some kids do really well in Montessori, and then some kids need more of a play based, or, vice versa. And if you're a parent of multiples, I have 4 kids, they're all adults now, but they, my daughter needed something very different than her brothers. So you really have to I think education, just like parenting, is the individual child.
I love it. One of my moms in my mom group, last night we had a game night group, and she was like, what you said changed everything. She was like, because I never thought of touring schools. Because I said, listen, make sure you tour all the schools in our area. All
Yeah.
of our schools are like A rated, like you technically can't go wrong, but walk into the school and you'll feel what's right. So she had like a top school that everyone's, oh, this is the top school because it's
Yeah.
in the best neighborhood. And she was like, I walked in and I was like, no. She was like, and that was on my list because all the groups, everyone's like, this is the school.
Yeah.
She's like, but then I was like, oh, Nicole said tour. So she was like, I looked at what our homeschool was like for our area, toured the school. She's like, we freaking fell in love. And I said, you see? And she was like, my son walked in. He was like, Mommy, I love it. And I was like, well, there you go. So
Yeah.
I like how you pointed that out. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's go back to when you opened your first preschool. And I know you were 23 years old and just had your first child. So, as high level as you can, talk to me about that time period. Maybe what are a couple things you learned? Because obviously now you have 4 kids later, you've opened multiple schools. What have you really learned? Maybe that's how I reframe that. What have you learned? Because I'm sure you can unpack and be like, okay, where do I begin? But what did you really learn during that time that you now take with you in your current business, which we'll even get into, of course? But yeah, what did you learn and what would you change anything? And what at the end of it, you're like, listen, at the end of the day, with education and schooling, this is what it is.
Yeah, I learned a lot. Well, first, I was 23. I just had my first son, and I had no idea what entrepreneurship was. I didn't even know what entrepreneur was. I don't even think I even knew that word really. So I just had this idea I was going to open up a preschool because I got 4 months into staying at home and I was like, I just feel like I need something else. So I opened my first my preschool in my home. I ran it successfully for 9 years in my home, but my husband at the time built a classroom on the house. And so I started with 4 kids, 2 were paying and 2 were not, because you can't start a classroom with 1 child. And 6 months later, I had 48 students, and the classroom was done and it was built and they had their own entrance. It was like a real classroom. So I think what I learned was, I always say I'm a mom turned CEO. I think I had this little tiny seed of an idea. I did not know how to get from A to Z. I had no idea. I just sketched some numbers on a piece of paper. I thought this is what I could make. I thought I could bring some income into the family. That's what I wanted. I wanted a little side job and I loved kids, but I also wanted to be a mom. And so I learned how to be a CEO, and I learned that if you water those seeds and you just believe in yourself, you can accomplish things. And especially when you're doing things with passion and joy. Like, I loved kids, loved it. And I still love it. I've owned my own centers for 24 years. So then I also, in 6 months, I had a staff. So all of a sudden I'm bringing on 2 employees and I didn't even know. I'm like, okay, now I'm like a real boss. What do I do? But I think from very early on running my businesses, I believed in my team first and before the client. And I will stand by that probably till my dying day, because as soon as I brought my teachers in, it's like a marriage or a relationship. It's, if the partners are not happy, if your teachers aren't happy in education, then nothing really works well. So my philosophy from very early on has been my team first. And that's how I've been a boss for 24 years. And I think that's how I've grown. That's how I've expanded. And that's how I've flourished, because my team, they're everything. If you do not have an amazing team, you do not have a school.
I think your story is so inspiring because to even say at 23 years old, you had this inkling of an idea and to do it, had your first child, so obviously he's a client of yours, right? You're your
Yes.
first client because there's a
Yes.
problem. You're like, "How do I solve this?"
Yeah.
May I ask though, at 23, I know you said your mom turned CEO, but what were your skill sets and what did you do to invest in yourself to then become a teacher? And what have you learned in that aspect? But you are an inspiration. So anyone listening to this, I think Miss Amber is a testament that if there is an idea, and I agree with it, I'm an entrepreneur, this is tough. It's cray cray. There's so much going on. But there's a quote that is, if God planted the seed, he wouldn't just basically leave you hanging. So
Yes.
you got to just keep going with it. And I think show the universe that you're willing to fight for it. So I think what you just said basically really aligned with me, and anyone listening is an inspiration. But yeah, so what skill sets did you develop and to then flourish and really kind of become this like teacher and educator that is like, okay, I know a couple of things and opening up other schools.
I didn't really develop myself in college. I'm one that I did the bare minimums to be an early childhood teacher. I learned on the job. And I think the first thing was, I had a passion and I had a love. And I did teach preschool before I opened up my own. And then 2, I have a lot of patience. I think when you have a lot of patience, and you have to be really flexible, and you have to have a lot of grace when you're owning your own business, and especially working with kids, right? And you also have to learn, like, I'm learning how to run a business and be a mom at the same time. So you're just juggling all these different things, right? And you're creating boundaries. I think even from young, I created boundaries. Of course, the early years in entrepreneurship, or the early years running your preschool, like, I was a perfectionist. So if I got an email that was a complaint, and we will never please everybody. No matter, you can be jumping over backwards 24 hours, but you will never please everybody. So I think that was one of my biggest lessons that took me many years to grasp, that no matter how much I try, I will not please everybody, and that is okay. And so letting that go, and rather than, I can go on a tangent, because I stuffed a lot of stuff for a really long time, and I let my stress,
Yeah.
I let the sometimes, like, if it'd be like an email would come through and I'd be like, "Oh, is it gonna be good or is it bad?" And I was running a really good program. I mean, I've had waiting lists since I was 23. So my schools are full for next year already. There's just like a little handful of spots. But I was just anxiety, like, I had a lot of anxiety, and then I ended up with breast cancer at 31. And I
Wow.
think that's part of things that I've learned, is really putting boundaries up, making, as an entrepreneur, making your workday end. at a certain time, and honoring and respecting that time, I think is so important.
You're hitting it on so many levels that maybe I needed to hear this conversation for myself. Because, yeah, I think sometimes if there's an email that I know, let's say a potential collaborator, someone, and I
Mhm.
feel already anxious, is it going to be good? Is it going to be bad? And I think what you're alluding to, and this is again, anyone, even if you're not looking to open a new school or you're not looking to go
Yeah,
into entrepreneurship, anything in life that maybe
yeah,
we're not setting boundaries with or we're already
yes.
feeling anxious, to let it go, to let it surrender. And what I'm learning is that if I am feeling that way, to pause and then maybe open it the next morning when I'm not with my family or not, then it's going
Yes.
to ruin like my nighttime sleep or something that's going to affect everything.
Totally. I would say it took me probably 8 years to really figure that out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think looking back, a lot of emails or situations I let spill in, and it's just only natural. So
Of course.
it's a learning curve. And that's just for even if you're staying home with your kids and you're volunteering a ton at the schools and you just keep
Yes.
saying yes to volunteering because you think you
Yes.
need to, but you're so stressed out, it's okay to say no. It is okay to say no.
Yes, and your kids will be okay, and if you
Oh,
can and you can
yes.
make one, like, look, I'm sure you
Yes.
couldn't have said you said your kids are grown, so I'm sure again, in hindsight, that you
Yeah.
could be like, "Listen, your kids will be okay."
Yes. They will be okay. Yes.
Okay, so I wanna talk about this because actually I just had a conversation today, and this has been coming up very often. I am based in South Florida, the shift in education. A
Mhm.
lot of parents are I see it in the groups. Is there homeschooling
Yeah.
pods, micro
Oh,
schools?
yeah.
Talk to me about that.
Right.
What tips would you give to those parents that are looking to change and those that are looking to create a micro school or preschool of their own?
Do it. Looking back now, I'm on the other end of it because my youngest just turned 18 last week. And now I can look from a different angle. And I have 4 kids. 2 of my kids did really well in traditional school, and 2 of my kids struggled from day 1. And as a parent, I begged actually 2 of my kids. I really wanted them to be homeschooled, but I also was divorced and I had to co-parent, and you have to be on the same team. So what I'm going to say now is if you want to homeschool or if your child is struggling in traditional school, pull them and don't be scared. Truly don't be scared. More and more people are taking their kids out of traditional school because I like to think of traditional school as a box. And if your child does not fit into that box, they're going to feel like a failure for most of their education. And I'm on a personal level, I've watched my own struggle. And that's not the truth. They're not a failure. Every child, every human being, you, we all learn differently. We all understand differently. So it's happening more and more. I've been on different, yes, it's a really big topic. And you know what's funny is my older kids now are talking about they want kids. I have my oldest is 24, almost 24. But my 22-year-old, he wants 7 kids, and I'm like, "Bring them on, I can't wait," right? But they're each when I hear them talk now, they're talking about homeschooling their kids. So there's a shift, you're right, there's a shift happening, and I say, if you are a working mom, there's collaboration. There's a lot of homeschools out there now that my daughter, her senior year, went to a hybrid. There's a lot of hybrids too, which are really awesome. She went to school Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then Tuesday, Thursday, it was like an internship. That was high school. So I am a super advocate of it. I just think, unfortunately, our public schools do not serve everybody well. And the problem is too, everybody's worried about their ratings for buying houses. The school districts are so worried about those A plus, B plus ratings that the kids are falling behind. They just continue to fall behind year after year. And it's just really unfortunate.
It is, and yeah, I mean, we probably can have a whole
I know,
topic about
sorry.
that.
The hot
No,
button
no,
for it's
no,
a
I
hot
love
button
it.
for me. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I love it. I was like, "Oh my gosh," we could probably talk because
Yeah.
I agree. So my question to you is then for someone who is, "Okay, but how do I do that? How do I still foster the independence for my child who might be struggling?" How do you recognize? How do you adapt? And then if let's say they can't, this is actually a good one. So let's say they can't. Let's say someone's listening to this and is, "Okay, Miss Amber and Nicole, like, fine, but we don't have that opportunity. Our neighborhoods or our area isn't so because like South Florida, like it's massive. Like we have Kind Academy, like I love the progression that we see in that in education. We still have issues though with our public school system, which is why so many parents are opting there. But let's say someone's listening is we don't have that here. What tips or what would you say to those parents to help then maybe that they can recognize and things that they can do to help be an advocate for their
Yeah.
child in the traditional school system?
Yeah, and that was me. I had a partner at the time, their dad, that was very opposite of me. So my kids had to stay in traditional school. So I had to be their advocate. So if you see that they're struggling, you can get IEPs, you can get them tested. There's certain things you can do within the school district, testing or just even help. Like my daughter had speech issues. You just have to be the squeaky wheel. I'm telling you, you've got to be in there. You have to have open communication with your teachers. Having a really strong relationship with your teachers too is really key. And sometimes people don't even think about if things are going on at home, if there's like trauma going on, there's just a lot of stuff going on in your home too. That really affects kids too in school. And so bridging the gap with communication is so key because your teachers, your educators really do love your kids. Like most every educator that is teaching your kids, they are there because they love teaching kids and they also want to be an advocate for your child. So when I say that the schools are kind of failing some of the kids, that's not the teachers. Does that make sense? It's not the teachers. So
Of course,
really,
it's the foundation.
it's the foundation.
The red
Yes.
tape and all of that.
It's yeah, so really building I was always had a relationship with my kids' teachers, always. Even through high school, I would meet with the guidance counselors. So that's how you just be an advocate. And I just think communication is key.
Yeah, I had an advocate based in Chicago where she actually goes into the school systems with kids,
Yeah.
but particularly
Yes.
kids that are in trauma filled
Mhm.
maybe homes, in low income homes that the parents are like, we don't know what to do. And it's easy for children like that to kind of fall through the cracks, right? Because let's say the school district is like overwhelmed and the teachers mean well, but Johnny's getting in trouble in class. And one of the things she said is exactly what you said. She was like, have that communication because the teachers may be thinking he's that's not a problem child. But if you can say,
Yes.
well, we're going through a divorce, or my husband and I are going through a really rough
Yes.
patch, or the grandfather is
Mhm.
sick, then the
Yes.
teacher, okay, I get it. And she was like, ideally, and to your point, the educator
Yeah.
or the teacher would be like, okay, so now we know, maybe we give them a little extra time. There's more empathy. She was like, or another good point she made is to alluding to you with the communication. If you're a mother or father that works all the time, the teacher's not thinking, oh, here's a deadbeat parent that doesn't care. Communicating, say, listen, the best time is really 3 to 6 because I'm working the night shift or I'm working the morning shift. And I was like, oh, that's so
Yes.
smart. She's
Yeah.
because they could be calling, this parent doesn't care. I don't
Right.
have time. If they're not communicating with me, she was like, but if you're the parent, say, listen, this is my schedule. I work
Yeah.
nights. Can we talk?
Mhm.
Whatever that is. So I loved how you mentioned that because that goes in line with an
Yeah.
advocate who helps with like IEPs and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about your school and or the Loving Start Way
Uh-huh.
and all the wonderful things that you've created. So talk to my listeners about your podcast. Talk to my listeners about the family that I know that you've created with the Loving Start Way. What is it? What are the services that you provide? And then how people can work with you.
Yeah, it's called the Loving Start Way. I just feel like I'm at a point in my life where I want to be of service. I really am excited and I just find a lot of joy in helping others. So I help others open their preschools, figure out staffing. There's a lot to do when you have your own center. I have created training videos. So a lot of times we have owners of preschools, owners of home daycares, and they're bringing in staff, but they do not know how to train them. It even goes down to curriculum. I mean, all of our years of curriculum planning, we have a community where teachers for 15.99 a month can get their whole month is done and ready from circle time to art to music. It's all done because that's as a teacher, it takes so much time. So if you're preschool or kindergarten, so I offer, yeah, I have a book. I finally wrote down all my failures, all my successes. It's basically a guidebook. If you're thinking about opening a home daycare or a preschool, yeah, I just love to help people because I truly believe we need more high quality childcare professionals. And it's just a topic that people don't really see, but it is so important. 0 to 5 years is such a tremendous part of growth. So that's kind of what I do now. I have my preschools, I'm franchising, I'm going nationwide. So it's really an exciting time. My kids are all grown up and I can finally look back and yay, they're like butterflies. They're flying and they're amazing. I mean, I shed a tear last week with my daughter and because she's now 18. And so I've just learned so much along the way. I just want to come along and encourage other people right now. If you have a dream, let's chase it. Because even as mamas, I mean, as parents, sometimes we forget about ourselves and we forget about those little dreams we have. But it's important to be like really positive role models for our kids and even chase our dreams so they chase theirs one day.
Yes, no, for sure. I'm sure this is a very exciting time now. Your
Yeah.
kids are building their families, talking about their
Yes.
dreams, which then
Yeah.
allows you maybe a little more freedom to kind of
Yeah.
focus and give back. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
How can people connect with you? How can people follow you? And then your final thought.
Yeah, I'm on all the social media at The Loving Start Way, at The Loving Start Way, and then my website's thelovingstartway.com. And final thoughts, I just want to encourage everybody to live their best life. I think life is, as a cancer survivor, life is so short. So take the chances, plant those seeds of ideas, go for your dreams, love on your kids fiercely. We're never going to be the perfect parent. If you're loving your kids really hard and you're showing up for them every day, they're going to turn out great. So give yourself a lot of grace because you're awesome. I mean, we're doing a great job. I think we need to all acknowledge that.
Yes, it comes up pretty often in my WhatsApp chat where moms are feeling down. Maybe they yelled, maybe they're stressed, and it's all the time reminders you're doing the best you
Yeah.
can.
Yeah.
And the fact that you even feel bad lets you know, like, you care
Yes.
and you're good, right?
Yeah,
Like, it's all good. Thank you so
absolutely.
much, Miss Amber, for coming on for an awesome conversation and continued blessings to you for love and light. Thank you.
Thank you so much.